wildly inspirational for a lot of people. But one of the things that you started doing that I noticed that you had already been doing was this process of meal prepping. Can you explain to the audience what that is and how it has opened up opportunities for you down the line?
Well, I mean, I've learned through my own weight loss journey that I'm just meal prepping helps me. I've just basically what I do is take a Sunday and make everything for the week, which they're not for everybody. Not a lot of people don't like making the same things every day. Don't worry, I have life hacks for that. I'm not going to go all into that stuff right now. But it's like from just a couple years into my own weight loss journey, I just learned that's helpful to me. If the food's already made, when I open the fridge, it's not digging around and making bad choices. I ultimately do it because I'm lazy. So it's not like everybody's like, oh my God, it's so you have so much motivation and you're such a hard worker. I'm like, I do it because I don't want to do that stuff every day.
Right.
I want to turn my brain off. And so from that's something that I kind of did before I started doing it on Instagram. I just did like a couple Facebook lives of showing my meal prep process. And like, it was just beyond successful where I was like, man, that many people just want to watch me like cook chicken on a Sunday. Like that's interesting. And so when I started to being consistent about it on Instagram, which is also my advice for social media, because I had shown a little bit of it this was already after I started this podcast. This started as a New Year's resolution in 2019 to make it more consistent. Was I try to use my social media as how is it helping somebody? I mean, there's so many influencers and stuff like that, and they don't give you a damn thing. They're like, buy my thing or whatever. Look at my hot ass. And I'm like, okay, but how is that helping me? Like,
Yeah.
like you look great, but what is that helping? How is this helping me at all? It's not. You're not giving me anything.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, well, what can I give to people? And people are interested in how do you meal prep and like recipes are you making up? And like I use that as you're going to keep coming back to me because I'm giving you something. And so every Sunday since New Year's of 2019, I show my meal prep process on Sundays, and I try to make it really fun. Also, because meal prepping doesn't have to be a snooze fest. Like I mess around with tiny hands and scream at my animals, and I have a tiny microphone, and I just like dance around the kitchen and show me setting off smoke alarms. Like it's not, it's just like kind of real life sort of stuff.
Before I go any further, I want to take a quick moment to recognize the sponsor of this video, Buzzsprout. Without Buzzsprout, these videos would not be able to happen and I would not be able to share them with you. Also, Buzzsprout is what I use to power my podcast, The Podcast Therapist. If you're starting a new podcast or looking for a new hosting provider for your podcast, Buzzsprout is your solution. Buzzsprout walks you through the process of uploading and publishing your podcast, as well as getting your podcast listed in over 15 plus directories, even the major ones. And they have customizable players that you can embed on your website so you can have consistent branding. There's an analytics panel that gives you easy to understand metrics so you can find out where people are listening from, and they have a visual soundbite tool that allows you to share valuable audio clips of your programs onto social media. Check the link in the description to get started with Buzzsprout for free for 90 days or visit buzzsprout.com.
And because of that, it's also shown, I would guess, in a world right now, you think that people aren't appointment setting because everything is so on demand, that I can listen to this podcast whenever I want. I can watch this TV show on Netflix whenever I want. But for this, it's only lives on my stories for 24 hours from Sunday into Monday. So it is appointment setting. Like once it's gone, it's gone. So you've got to be there. And the analytics that follow that definitely reflect that. I mean, the numbers that I have of people viewing my stories on a Sunday sometimes quadruple. And so it's, because of that, I'm like, I have created a very highly engaged segment that can be sold. And so I can sell sponsorships or, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And put a swipe up in the middle of this. And that was just it was never my intention starting that. That's not what I started it for. But it kind of became that because it's so useful to people. And that's also the time that I promote my podcast the most. Like if you ever watch my Meal Prep Sunday on Instagram, you will notice here are links to my podcast that came out this week. I have a podcast. Don't forget I have a podcast.
Right.
And so it's not only, it can be a tool to make money from other potential clients, which I have, but it's also just to promote me. And when I'm promoting my podcast and more people listen to my podcast, that also gives me another opportunity for revenue of not only do people watch me on this Instagram page, which Instagram could get shut down tomorrow and it's gone. And that's what's scary about social media. But
Mhm.
the podcast is mine. So as long as I'm kind of dragging some of those people over to know I have a podcast, I still have people here. Or I haven't done this in a while, but engage people to sign up for my newsletter. So I have an email list and everything like that. So that's how that kind of, where I talked about how having the social media and the podcast where they kind of help each other out.
Mhm.
That's how they kind of, some people find the podcast first, will follow me on Instagram, or they'll find me on Instagram and follow and listen to the podcast.